If you've ever wondered what it feels like to hear your own father say, "Let her go, we won't pay for the surgery," while you're fighting for your life, I can tell you it's ice cold. Not the chill from a hospital room, but the kind that sinks deep into your soul and makes you wonder if you ever truly mattered to him. I was 21, a college senior, and I had always known my dad was tight with money, but I never imagined he would put a price on my survival. It began with a terrible car crash. I don't remember the collision itself, only the screaming tires and the world turning upside down. When I finally regained consciousness, I was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by tubes, wires, and the constant beeping of machines. My head pounded violently and my body felt foreign, as if it no longer belonged to me. I tried to shift, but nothing moved. Panic surged through me, yet I couldn't speak a single word. I couldn't even open my eyes properly. I was locked inside my own body, a silent observer to everything unfolding around me. I heard voices, doctors and nurses discussing my case, my mother's soft crying, and then my father's voice, cold and practical, slicing through the fog. "How much will the surgery cost?" he asked. The doctor paused before answering. "It's quite expensive, but it gives her the best possible chance." My father's response came without hesitation. "We can't afford that." "Just let her go." I wanted to scream, to plead, to let them know I was still conscious and fighting, but all I could do was lie there and listen as he signed the documents. A do not resuscitate order. 3 words that meant if my heart stopped beating, no one would attempt to bring me back. All because saving me was too costly. The following days melted into one another. I slipped in and out of awareness, sometimes catching fragments of conversation, sometimes lost in vivid dreams that felt more alive than reality. My mother came to see me every single day, gently holding my hand and murmuring how much she loved me. My father visited far less often, always glancing at his watch, always mentioning bills and insurance coverage. I don't know exactly what kept me alive. Perhaps it was pure stubbornness. Perhaps it was the vision of everything I still wanted to experience: graduating, traveling the world, falling in love. Or perhaps it was the quiet fury growing inside me at the knowledge that my own father had abandoned me. 72 hours went by. The doctors called it a miracle that I pulled through. When I finally opened my eyes for good, my mother was beside me, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. She embraced me so tightly I could hardly breathe. My father stood off to the side, arms folded, his expression distant and icy. He didn't speak a word, neither did I, not at first. I allowed them to believe I was still fragile and that I remembered nothing. But I remembered every single detail, every sentence, every choice, every moment he picked money over my life. The hospital discharged me after a week. My mother hovered over me at home, making sure I had everything I needed. My father hardly glanced in my direction. Back at the house, the atmosphere was strained. He behaved as though nothing unusual had occurred, as if I should feel thankful just to be breathing. But I noticed how he tensed whenever I entered the room and how he avoided meeting my gaze. I began observing other things too, unpaid bills stacking up on the kitchen counter. My father arguing on the phone late into the night with insurance representatives. He had always boasted about his careful financial planning and his smart investments. But now the cracks were showing, and I was determined to expose them. While recovering during the day, I spent my nights digging through documents. I examined old folders, bank records, anything within reach. In just 1 week, I learned more about my father's financial secrets than I had known in my entire life. I discovered hidden offshore accounts, undisclosed debts, and risky investments he had kept concealed from everyone, including my mother. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted him to feel secure, to assume he had escaped any consequences. I wanted him to think I was still the compliant daughter who would never push back. But I was finished staying quiet. The breaking point arrived one evening when I overheard him speaking on the phone. "She's become a burden," he said. "If she hadn't survived, we would have been in a much better position." My blood turned to ice. I understood then that he hadn't simply given up on me, he had actually wished for me to die. That same night, I made my choice. I refused to let him control me any longer or dictate my future. I waited until he left for work the following morning. Then I collected every piece of evidence I had found, every paper, every email, every record. I packed a small bag and called for a taxi. I didn't inform my mother about my plans. I simply left. I went directly to the authorities and handed over everything, proof of tax evasion, fraud, and embezzlement. I told them all I knew. They listened carefully, took detailed notes, and asked follow-up questions. When I finished, they thanked me and said I had done the correct thing. I walked out of that building feeling lighter than I had in a very long time. I had no idea what would come next, but I knew one truth clearly. My father would never be able to harm me again. The hours after leaving home passed like a surreal, floating dream. I checked into a modest hotel close to campus, using the emergency credit card my mother had given me years earlier for emergencies. I sat on the bed's edge, gazing at the city lights, replaying every moment of the past week in my mind. I wondered whether my mother was worried, whether my father had even noticed my absence. I questioned if I had made the right decision, or if I had only complicated everything further. I barely slept that night. My thoughts kept returning to the hospital room and the sound of my father's voice as he signed away any chance of saving me. I recalled the pitying looks from the nurses and how the doctors avoided eye contact. I wondered if they had realized what he had done, or if they had witnessed other parents choosing money over their child's life before. The next morning brought a flood of messages. My mother's texts were desperate. "Where are you? Are you safe? Please call me." My father's were short and harsh. "Come home immediately." I ignored them both. I needed space to think, to breathe, and to decide my next steps. I spent the day walking through the city, allowing the crisp air to clear my thoughts. I wandered past parks and cafes, observing families smiling and chatting, and I wondered if they realized how fortunate they were. I reflected on my own family and how things had once been. I remembered birthday celebrations and family movie nights, the way my father used to carry me on his shoulders and call me his little princess. I wondered when everything had shifted, when I had turned from a joy into a burden. By afternoon, the story had broken on the local news. My father's face appeared everywhere. A well-known businessman, now under investigation for serious financial crimes. I watched the report in a small cafe, my pulse racing as the anchors detailed the accusations. Tax evasion, embezzlement, money laundering. I saw police vehicles parked outside our house and neighbors gathered on the street, talking quietly. I wondered if my mother had figured out my role in all of this. My phone vibrated again. This time it was an unfamiliar number. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Hello? Is this Emily?" a woman asked. "Yes," I replied softly. "This is Detective Harris. I wanted to inform you that the information you provided was extremely helpful. We have taken your father into custody. He won't be able to reach you for some time." I exhaled shakily. "Thank you," she added. "If you recall anything else or need support, please contact me. And Emily, what you did took real courage." Not everyone would have been brave enough. I ended the call with trembling hands. A strange combination of relief and guilt washed over me. Relief that the nightmare was finally ending and that he could no longer threaten me. Guilt that I had been the one to cause his downfall and shatter what remained of our family. The following days passed in a haze. My mother left repeated voicemails that shifted between fury and sorrow. In one she cried, "How could you do this to your own family? He's your father. He made mistakes, but he still loves you." In another, her tone turned bitter. "You've destroyed everything. I hope you're satisfied." I couldn't bring myself to reply. I understood her pain, but I also knew the reality. My father had chosen wealth over me and over all of us. He had constructed his entire life on deception, and now that deception had finally caught up with him. One evening, while sitting in the hotel lobby, my younger brother called. He was still in high school, caught in the middle of a conflict he couldn't fully grasp. "Emily," he said quietly, "are you all right?" I fought back tears. "I'm okay, how about you?" He paused. "Mom is falling apart. Dad is gone. There are reporters everywhere. I just want everything to return to how it was." I closed my eyes, wishing I could fix it for him. "I know." "I'm sorry, but this was the only path left." He stayed silent for a while. "I miss you." "I miss you too," I whispered, my voice cracking. "But I'll see you soon." "I promise." After we hung up, I remained in the lobby for a long time, watching strangers pass by. I wondered what the future held. Whether my father would end up in prison, whether my mother would ever forgive me, and whether my brother would one day understand my actions. The following morning, I met Detective Harris at the station. She explained the charges in detail and what would happen next. "Your father's assets have all been frozen," she told me. "He has lost everything, the house, the vehicles, the accounts." I nodded silently. "What about my mother and brother?" "They will be supported," she assured me. "We'll ensure they have what they need." I left the station feeling both relieved and strangely hollow. I had fought so hard just to survive, and to be heard that I wasn't sure how to live now that the battle was over. I walked the city streets for hours, letting the sharp wind bite against my skin. I thought about the life I wanted to create for myself, and about whether I could ever forgive my father or myself. That night, I checked out of the hotel and moved in temporarily with a close friend. She greeted me warmly, without pressing for details. We stayed up late talking and laughing, and for the first time in weeks I felt almost like myself again. Yet even as I tried to move forward, the past continued to shadow me. I knew my father's trial would dominate the headlines for months, and that my family would never return to what it once was. Still, I also knew deep down that I had made the right decision. I had chosen to protect myself, to keep living, and to break free from the toxic pattern. And for the first time, I felt proud of that choice. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into an entirely different reality, one where the old rules no longer applied. News of my father's arrest was everywhere, and I could feel people staring wherever I went. Some offered pitying glances, others showed open curiosity, but none of them knew the full story. None of them knew what it meant to be the daughter who had survived, who had revealed the truth, and who had refused to remain silent any longer. I focused on my studies, refusing to let the family crisis derail my future. My professors were supportive and granted extensions, but I could see the unspoken questions in their eyes. I offered no explanations. My story was mine alone. My mother eventually stopped calling. The quiet that replaced her messages felt even heavier than her accusations. I continued worrying about my brother and sent him short messages daily, small notes to remind him I was still there and that I still cared. Sometimes he replied, sometimes he didn't. I told myself he simply needed time to process everything. One afternoon, as I was leaving campus, my father's lawyer approached me near the gate. He handed me a sealed envelope without expression. "Your father wanted you to receive this," he said quietly. I took it with unsteady hands and walked away without responding. Inside was a short letter written in my father's neat, familiar handwriting. He offered no apology and no explanation. He simply wrote, "You made your choice. I hope you can live with the consequences." There was no reference to the hospital, the DNR order, or the years he had placed money above family. Only one final line, "You're on your own now." I stared at those words for a long time, expecting to feel anger, sorrow, or remorse, but all that came was a deep sense of relief. I was finally free. For the first time in my life, I no longer had to follow his rules. I could choose the person I wanted to become. I began meeting with a college counselor who listened without judgment and helped me work through the tangled emotions of guilt, grief, and resentment. I spoke about the crash, the hospital room, and the devastating moment I realized my father would rather let me die than spend the money to save me. I talked about the difficult decision to turn him in and the mixture of fear and liberation that followed. Gradually, I began to heal. I formed new friendships with people who knew me for who I was, not for the scandals surrounding my family. I joined a support group for trauma survivors, and for the first time I heard stories that echoed my own experience. I realized I was far from alone. My brother visited me one weekend. He seemed more mature and serious, but when he hugged me, I felt like a child again. We spent the afternoon in my small apartment, sharing pizza and watching movies, briefly pretending life was ordinary. "Do you hate him?" he asked quietly at one point. I shook my head. "No. I just can't allow him to hurt me anymore." He nodded, seeming to understand more than I expected. "I'm glad you're okay." We didn't discuss our father again that day. We didn't need to. As time passed, the intense media attention slowly died down. My father's trial concluded with a guilty verdict. He lost everything, his wealth, his status, and his freedom. My mother moved in with extended family. My brother completed high school, and I graduated college with honors, walking across the stage with my head held high, knowing I had earned every achievement. I never saw my father again, and I had no desire to. I constructed a new life on my own terms, one where I decided whom to trust, whom to love, and whom to allow close. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I think about the girl I used to be before the accident, the girl who believed her father would always protect her, the girl who thought family love was unconditional. I mourn that innocent version of myself, but I don't miss her. I am stronger now. I know my own value. If you're listening to this, and you've gone through something similar, if you've ever had to make an impossible decision to stand up for yourself when no one else would, or if you've lost people you thought you couldn't survive without, I want you to know you are not alone. You are far stronger than you realize. I survived. I rebuilt my life. And I learned that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to release the people who tried to destroy you.